Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Inept General bringing you the top 5 things to know before you start a Vampire Coast campaign. I have been lucky enough to get my hands on early access to the new upcoming DLC of the Vampire Coast for Total War Warhammer 3, and I just wanted to talk to you guys about the top 5 most important things to remember when you guys get your hands on it next week. Now, these are kind of important. They can mess up your campaign early doors, so without further ado, let's kick off the list. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is pickups at sea. Previously in the game, guys, as you all well know, you're able to pick up items in the ocean, whether it be money or a boost to your campaign movement or a boost to your battle stuff. You could just go over it, full tilt, pick it up. Now things have changed very much. You can't do double movement and pick up some of these items. Some of them you can still, and those are the ones that don't involve any interaction. But for others, you will face the choice between a battle or walking away with the money. Now, the battle you'll face is a battle whereby you can't actually see the other half of the army. So you won't be able to see how your enemy numbers or anything like that before you pick to go into the battle. And once you're in the battle, you can't retreat from the battle itself. So you're stuck in it, and early doors, if you get too greedy chasing after this cash, you will lose your starting army. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean your campaign's over and done with, because you do have Raised Dead with the vampire counts. There's always the chance, or the Vampire Coast even, sorry, I'm going to do that a lot, there's always a chance that you can raise the dead and just raise another army very quickly. But the issue being that you'll lose some of your very powerful starting units if you do go down that route. So what I'd advise, guys, is early on, try to just go for the not fighting battle. You will still take away gold, or whatever the prize is, just not as much as you'd get if you fought the battle. Now, on the other side, so let's take the Skull Islands that used to pop up in the game. They would typically, if you went over them, give you 10,000 gold. Now, what they'll actually do now is perhaps give you even more than that, up to sort of 20,000, maybe even more than that gold, for when you go over these, when you do fight that battle and win. But if you don't do it, you'll walk away with 2,500, 2,000, something around that region. So you do still get cash, and you know what? Early doors, when you're just starting out, maybe back away from those fights. It probably isn't worth it as far as how much it will slow your progress down. Okay, now the idea of raising the dead is interesting for the Vampire Coast, and it leads us on to the second issue that you should be paying attention to when you start your Vampire Coast campaign, and that is recruitment. Now, the recruitment works a bit funny, particularly with the legendary lords of the Vampire Coast. When you pick them, they come with a new horde mechanic whereby they are able to build structures, and the idea is it's their ship that they're building up, and you'll be able to recruit units from your ship and do all sorts of things. Now, what this actually means, however, is that when you are locally recruiting on your first settlement or around that area, you can only seemingly be able to recruit one unit before it kicks you into encampment mode, and then you are stuck only being able to do that, and then the rest go into the global pool. So for the starting legendary lords, there's a funny quirk of the system whereby you can't get the cheaper locally recruited units. But this is kind of sorted out in the Vampire Coast in that Raised Dead is not necessarily more expensive than recruiting locally. So I think, as I remember, for the Vampire Counts, what you used to be able to do is Raised Dead was more expensive, and that's why you were more encouraged to recruit locally than Raising the Dead. For the Vampire Coast, Raised Dead seems to be about the same price, at least that's my impression. So, look to Raised Dead rather than build up locally. So it also maybe encourages you to build up your ship before you start building recruitment buildings in your first settlements. Now, this is not as much of an issue for Noctilus and Araness Assault Spy. They both start on their own distinct islands. They don't have to capture anyone to complete a province or anything like that. It's maybe more relevant to Siloster Diathin and Luther Harkon, who do need to capture settlements to complete a province, and their recruitment is slightly thrown off by the whole thing. But you can build up your ship on land as well, so don't forget that is an option. So just bear that in mind. Recruitment's a little bit funny with the legendary lords. Just keep an eye out for that when you are deciding to build early recruitment buildings in your settlements. It's maybe not worth it. Maybe concentrate on the ship until you get a second army out there where you can recruit locally. That moves us on to number 3. You will be probably inundated, or you'll have at least a few of these pirate rogue armies around you at any given time. They pop in and out, they kind of wander around the ocean. They're not necessarily set on attacking you a lot of the time, but what the thing is to remember with these guys is even if they're heading in your direction, they're not going to make landfall. The flags with a blue stripe across them will never land and take your settlement. They will attack you on the ocean, but they won't attack you on land. Now, there is a point in the game where you reach a level of infamy, which is kind of the currency that you collect throughout the campaign to progress it. And you reach a level of infamy that triggers an army to spawn and come straight at you. These guys will be noted with a turquoise band, and they hold several of the verses of the shanty that you need to complete a Vampire Coast campaign. Now, with these turquoise band armies, they will make landfall and attack your cities, so watch out for those. And if you have maybe colorblind, I'm not sure if the blue turquoise distinction is one you can't make, but bear that in mind when you're looking at the armies. So look out, turquoise band, blue, you're perfectly safe on land. Now, for the fourth thing, let's talk about pirate coves. These really change the way that you can make money in the game and the way you maybe want to play it. For me, you don't really need to take any settlements as a Vampire Coast army. It's just not necessary. You can make huge amounts of cash by, firstly, you take a settlement, you can build a pirate cove in it, and then there's an option, there's a few different buildings you can pick. The one that really makes you the most money is a building that siphons off 50% of the income from that city. That will always go into your coffers. So if you start to get some of the cities that make a huge amount of money around the game, cities with big ports or cities that are just known for making cash, you will start to rake in a huge amount of money by having established a pirate cove in that city. So it's really unnecessary to take settlements. You don't need to do it at all. And it's actually probably more efficient to take pirate coves because you're not having to defend anything except for your one city in the case of Aranessa and Noctilus, or your one province in the case of Diathin and Harkon. So bear that in mind, guys. It's really just not necessary to hugely take settlements. Don't necessarily play this like a classic Total War Warhammer campaign. You can get away with a very different way of playing, and I kind of like that. As a pirate, you don't want to conquer, you don't want to start an empire, unless you do. I mean, by all means, feel free to go ahead. But it's just not necessary. You can make huge amounts of cash, build huge navies, just by establishing these pirate coves. Now, some of the other buildings allow you to gain infamy, boost your research rate, or like build up vampiric corruption in a certain area. Those aren't, for me, as useful as the 50% cash siphon. So bear that one in mind, guys. And this leads us to really the fourth thing to remember, and that is treasure maps and the pieces of gold. Now, on the right-hand side of your screen at the bottom there in the circle, you'll see a map icon, and that will lead you to the treasure map thing. Now, treasure maps for me are a bit funny. I've had a lot of hours with the game now, and I have only ever found one treasure map. Now, I'm not sure what the chances are, the odds are of it popping up are, but the only treasure map I've ever had is the one that popped up at the very beginning of one of my campaigns where you get one for free. Not to say there aren't many out there, I just might be particularly unlucky, but maybe just bear in mind they can be potentially hugely rare. Now, these lead you to a whole bunch of things, items, cash, stuff like that. But just look out for them. There's a stance in the army stance list, that's dig, that can give you a chance of discovering treasure maps, as well as digging up the treasure once you're in the right province for the treasure map. And that's kind of a fun little mechanic. Your agents can do it as well, and your agents can also establish pirate coves, if I didn't mention that earlier. But also in this treasure menu, you get the pieces of gold. Now, the pieces of gold are basically telling you where your regiments of renown are. Now, you can go and find them, and you can actually pick out which regiments you want by taking down individual armies. So that's actually kind of helpful, that you just have to set sail to sea. If there's a particular regiment of renown you want, just go target that army, take them down, and you'll get the regiment of renown. So that's how you get those guys. You might want to prioritize maybe the higher end regiments of renown, rather than just getting the lower end ones, but those armies will be a bit more difficult to beat, bear that in mind. And that's really about it, the top 5 things, guys. I'd say the most threatening were the ones I began the list with. Watch out for those treasures. Don't get greedy, chaps. It will bite you in the bottom. But apart from that, guys, as always, a huge thank you for watching. Hope this was helpful, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright, guys. Bye.